So what I'd like you to do now is draw with your pencil just 6 quick boxes on a piece of paper, and I already have them started. They don't need to be perfect squares. You just need to fill up your paper with 6 boxes, and do those with a light pencil. Now, the first mark you're going to make is what we call hatching, and that means parallel lines right next to each other with our pen point. And you see this texture that I have here. I didn't worry that the lines went all the way across the whole square. I just kept them all in the same direction. That's hatching. So try that now, some hatching in your first square. Remember our lesson about patience and that you have to have patience when you're working with texture? So don't worry if you don't fill up the whole thing. But this second one, I'm going to continue to work on. This is cross-hatching. And you notice the lines are much finer than this. That's because I used a finer pen. And I'm going to do very fine lines in one direction, and then stop and change direction and do some more lines. Do you remember we did that with pencil too? We had the lines very close together, parallel, that means all going in the same direction, and we did about 6 or 8 lines and then stopped and changed direction like we're making an X. Another way you can do this with pen is to simply do a lot of X's. When you fill up the whole square, you'll see you've created a new texture with your cross-hatching. Cross-hatching is a very common technique that artists use to build up darker values. So if I were to keep going multiple directions over the same area, diagonal to the left, diagonal to the right, up and down, this area would get darker. Can you kind of see it happening now? So this area that I've already cross-hatched, I'm going over with more lines. And I just keep changing direction, and it's getting darker. Remember when we met last time, we talked about how texture is shown by the changes in value, light against dark, whether that's through lines or scrumbling circles, or by changing pressure with a pencil. But with a pen, you can't really change your pressure. The ink that comes out of the tip, that's the mark that you get. It's what you do with the mark. So for our next technique, we're going to do something called stippling. And this is so much fun. It's making tiny dots over and over. Now don't press so hard that you hurt the point of your pen, but by making our dots over and over next to each other, you create a texture. Depending on how close the dots are to each other, creates the value. So you see in this corner here, which is where I want you to start, just start making dots. Don't try to plan where they go or make them all in a row. Just keep making the dots. And if you keep making them all close to each other, it will be a darker value. But as you spread the dots apart, so there's more space in between, it's a lighter value. Now the stippling technique with a pen is also a common technique that artists use to make an ink drawing, to change value. This is often a technique used when doing facial expressions in skin tone because you don't want to make it too dark and you don't want to use cross-hatching. So by using something as subtle as stippling, you can get a change in value. So try that now in your next square. Stipple close together in the corner and start to spread your dots across as you move to the opposite corner. Great! Now our next technique you'll remember from last time, scrumbling. Make your circles of your scrumbling. Remember, we're just going to keep going with tiny circles overlapping each other. The smaller you make the circles, the darker the value and the tighter the texture. So I'm going to scrumble, keep on going where I had started here. And there really isn't a pattern. I'm just going to kind of loop them together. Now the same thing applies as cross-hatching, that if I were to go back over where I just did it and do it again, by scrumbling over top, I would create a darker value. So I'm now scrubbing over what I've already done. And already you can see that it's darker. So you can see we already have 4 textures created with pen with totally different types of marks that we're making on the page. Now for this next texture, I want you to repeat a shape over and over. Now this is going to take some time, but think about the scales on a fish or even a snake skin. It's a shape that's repeated over and over that creates the texture. So a diamond shape, if I were to repeat a diamond shape, very small with my pen, making tiny marks, tiny diamonds over and over that all connect, I would have a texture.